And for us, it gives us an opportunity to, one, share information, meet new people, and also answer your questions. We have a special guest today, Labake, and I'll be taking some questions behind. She'll also take us on the work that she does, and she's also going to answer some questions. Yes, an intro. So HoaQ Club is an amazing family of mine, started by two great guys, Luby and Joe, and they're on the call. So I have to do a great job as well, but they're going to fire me. And it's a club. It's a club that has over 600 members, community of creators, investors, operators that came together to start investing in startups. And we focus on startups in Africa and the diaspora. So we've done deals within the continent and outside the continent, especially if the founders are Africa heritage or focusing on Africa or Africans. Our mission obviously is to support founders that are leveraging technology and solving like the biggest problems of the continent. We started 4 years ago, and we're still on that journey. And thanks to everybody that has joined us on the journey. Next slide, please. Yes, finally to the best part of the day. So I'm joined by Labake Ajiboye-Richard. She's also a friend of the family. She's the founder of AR Initiative, and she's an impact and sustainability advisor. I think let me start by, first of all, Labake, thank you for joining. Do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yes, thank you so much, Yewande. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Labake Ajiboye-Richard. As Yewande said, I am the founder and principal consultant of the AR Initiative. The AR Initiative is a sustainability and impact advisory that works with African businesses and everything to do with sustainability and impact. So what that means is we work with businesses on developing ESG strategy, building out data management systems to track and manage impact performance, and also put out impact reporting. We're also knowledge creators on sustainability because the idea is we're trying to develop capacity and knowledge within the African base on everything to do with sustainability and impact. So great to meet you guys. I hope to get some great questions. I think you're still on mute, Yewande.
That's how you know it's my first time. Sorry. So I think first question is, so how did you come about like starting AR Initiative and why? And how has it been so far? How long have you run it? What made you start? And also obviously because most of us are like founders, operators, we also want to know the story behind, you started something amazing.
So it's a very interesting journey. I've always been interested in development. I was one of those kids that you would ask, who are your role models? And I'll say Nelson Mandela and Kofi Annan, which, at 8, I don't think I really understood the depth of the work that they did, but they were my role models. And so I've always been in the development space. My academic background is in political science, and I have a master's in private sector-led development. But that kind of started. So right after my undergraduate degree, I worked in Goldman Sachs, and I worked in their private wealth management office. And even though I was on the management desk, I was exposed to kind of their corporate engagement team. And that's what turned my interest, if you will, towards private sector-led development. It was kind of my first experience with the private sector taking kind of an active role in fostering development. And I mean, at the time, it was in a local capacity. So I was living in Boston, so it was in Boston in a local capacity, but it made me think bigger and think of Africa, where I was from, and Nigeria, and what does that mean? How can we engage the private sector in kind of amplifying and accelerating the development work that's being done on the continent? And so after that, I moved to Switzerland to do my master's, where I did my master's in private sector-led development, and kind of honed that knowledge and those skills yet again in private sector-led development. And that brought me back, long story short, to Nigeria after being away for a long time. The Nigerians here would understand or know what NYSE is. And my parents were kind of going on about how I haven't done my NYSE yet, and I've been out of the country for a very long time. So I moved back to do that, and through the NYSE process, and after that, I was kind of looking for roles that were in that space. So private sector led development, but we're not CSR roles. So they were not like philanthropic, like business philanthropy. So, you know, building a school or building a road, but they were more kind of systems focused. And at the time, I didn't really find any. So I started kind of speaking to local businesses, like a restaurant in my area, just, oh, do you guys think about the people that you hire, or how much water you use, or what you do with your food waste at the end of the day? And then I started understanding that a lot of small businesses don't think about sustainability. A lot of small businesses here don't even understand what that means for them, how it could be a value driver for them, how it could open them to new markets and new opportunities, how it could be a source of profit potentially, but also understand the impact of their business, whether it's small or large scale, on, you know, social and environmental sustainability. So that's kind of how the AIR initiative started. I just started speaking to little businesses, and then I developed an impact report for a friend of mine who runs a startup. She runs an agri-tech startup, and she likes to say she was my very first client, which she kind of was. But I developed an impact report for her, and seeing how much leverage the impact report gave to her business, it helped her really understand her offering beyond like an agri-tech business, right? It helped her understand that she was actually contributing to carbon sequestration and building climate resilience in smallholder farmers, and the work that she was doing in empowering female smallholder farmers, and start aggregating and collecting that data. So that's kind of how we started. So I did her report at the end of December 2021, and then in January 2022, I decided to kind of make it a business, a proper thing. And so yeah, we will be 3 years in January, and we're going somewhat strong. I think you're on mute still.
So I was saying I have a set of questions, but I also want to ask a quick question just for the way you answered this one. And for me, the question is, you said you worked with your friend to do like an impact report. And I know that most startups or early stage or small businesses struggle to figure out why that's important, especially with competing with other like pain points or other things they're trying to solve. So how were you able to, I mean, apart from the fact that she's your friend or other businesses, how important is it to be able to prioritize that at the early stage of a business or a startup?
So the interesting thing is, at the time when I did hers, it was December 2021. So the conversation was even more early stage in Africa than it is now. I feel like the conversation has definitely moved forward a lot more. There's a lot, I think the number was 1/3 of all funding that came into African startups last year was for climate tech. So the conversation, investors, the funding has definitely increased significantly over the last few years. But it's a lot of pitching, right? And helping people really understand, which is why knowledge is a huge part of what we do. Knowledge creation and knowledge management and sustainability in Africa, helping people understand that this is not something completely separate from the business that you're doing. This is not something that we're not asking you to build schools or build roads. This is something that involves you thinking about how you're doing your business already in a bigger way, in a more robust way, and thinking about it in ways that are not only helpful for you, so it helps you mitigate certain risks, helps you kind of attract a different set of investors, opens you up to a new set of like funding facilities. It also helps you understand where you could potentially set yourself apart. So for example, her business that I mentioned, she's an agri-tech business. There are quite a few agri-tech businesses in the ecosystem, but understanding the sustainability offering or the impact offering that her business had helped her really zero in on the problems that she wanted to solve and communicate that better to all sets of investors, whether they're commercial investors, whether they're impact investors. And I think it's really building that understanding first with like the clients and the people that I speak with, and helping them know that this is not something that's separate from your business. Sustainability is important in every kind of business. If you have an agri-tech, you have a fintech, you have an educational company, even if you're a restaurant, there's elements of sustainability within every business that you're building, and being able to understand that and leverage that knowledge and understanding is also very valuable to kind of your entrepreneurial journey.
Okay, I'm tempted to ask you a harder question, but I'll just wait.
Go on then.
Yeah, I should ask a hard question. Okay,
Yeah.
like one more hard question before I like go. And I know you didn't expect it. So a lot of like startups, tech startups are like more software focused. And when you talk about sustainability, impact, it's almost like I'm building software. I'm not necessarily agri-tech. I don't necessarily have a restaurant, but I'm building in spaces where software is first. How how different is that from knowing that even investors are looking for sustainability and impact, even though they're like software focused? Like, what's the gap between what they're thinking and where they actually should be, even if they're software first?
So here's the thing with, or let me start with this. So sustainability, I think there's a slight misconception that sustainability is just climate change, it's just environmental sustainability, so emissions and renewable energy and stuff. But there's social sustainability, which talks about working conditions and labor, occupational health and safety. It talks about gender. It talks about like governance practices. There's so many sectors within sustainability, and that is relevant for any business. Even if you're a software business, if you're hiring people, you have a team, then we need to talk about what are you paying the people on your team. Let's talk about how many women are on your team. What is your workplace culture like? The software that you're building, how does it impact the community? Can women access this software in a similar way to the men can access this software? What's the demographic impact of it? So people of certain ages, is it empowering them or is it inaccessible to them? People of certain geographies. So if you're building a software that is supposed to kind of help Africans, but only a subset of people in urban areas can use it, and it excludes, those that are in rural areas, how can we change that and optimize that so that it's your software is more inclusive, right? So every business has elements of sustainability because you're working with people and your products or services are for people, right? It doesn't just have to be the environment. It doesn't just have to be kind of, emissions and renewable energy. But if we're talking software, depending on, the scale of that software, I think artificial intelligence is pegged to be one of the largest contributors to emissions in the next few years if we're going at the rate that we're going, because it consumes a lot of energy. So it depends on the scale of your software business as well. We can talk about the environmental impact of that. But in general, I think a good entry point for understanding for everybody is that if you're a person hiring people, building products and services for people, then social sustainability falls within your realm anyway.
Okay, I think that was even me. I learned that was really good. And that leads to the next question. So the next question is, what gaps do you see between what impact investors are looking for and what African founders are presenting in their sustainability strategies?
So one big gap, to be honest, I think is the knowledge one, right? So founders are sometimes thinking sustainability should be a separate initiative. And so when they're speaking to investors that are kind of looking for this within the startups that they want to invest in, they're thinking more about how are you integrating this into your business model? So for example, if you're speaking to an impact investor, and another thing is different impact investors care about different things. That's another kind of interesting thing. So there's some that their impact goals are based around job creation. There's some of the impact goals are based around gender and empowering women and young people. Some that their impact is focused around, building climate resilience and building capacity for climate adaptability. So there are different kinds of investors within the impact investing or clean green investor space. But one thing that I kind of find to be a gap is that founders are more so thinking about what they can do to show that, they're a sustainable business, if you will. Meanwhile, investors are looking into how are you writing that into your business model? Like what policies do you have that ensure that your team is inclusive and diverse? What policies do you have to manage waste within your organization and encourage like circularity within your business model? What policies do you have to ensure or to manage governance risks and to manage the culture within your organization. They're looking for how you've written that into your everyday operations, into your supply chain, into kind of your governance structures. And I think founders, potentially because of a lack of real understanding of kind of the breadth of sustainability, I will say, kind of think of it more so as what can they show these investors that they're doing? Like, okay, we've done a project that, you know, helped XYZ people, but investors are really looking for businesses that have sustainable business models, representing some of the things I've said. But also data is another really big one. So this is a challenge I've come across as well, which is why one of the services that we do is helping organizations build like impact data management systems where there's not enough of data that can really support the impact narrative that businesses want to sell, right? So I think founders could do a little bit more in collecting this data. So for example, if you have a software company and it's a platform that people go on, disaggregate some of the data on the platform, right? So who are the women using the platform? What ages are they using the platform? Where are they using the platform? That way you can tell an impact story, right? That 50% of our users are women that live in rural areas in East Africa. And we're kind of bringing a solution that wasn't represented there before. But if you don't have that disaggregated data, and this could just be in the, what is it called? The sign-in portion of your platform, if you will, and you've collected that much data that tells and supports, you know, a really strong impact narrative. So I think data is another one that I would flag. There's potentially a gap.
Yeah, you already answered my next question, because my next question, a lot of founders struggle with like data collection or even knowing what to collect. So I was going to ask, how can founders do it better, especially early stage founders where, you know, they just have like a very small team. Like I said, they're figuring out like, you know, what fire to quench or what fire to kill. And, you know, it's always like an afterthought for sustainability. It's always like, oh, like you said, we have to do a project, or we have to do something at the end of the year, or we have to come up with a report and start looking for what to write in the report. So how can they better collect that data? I know you give us one example, like, okay, the product, thinking about the product. Is there any other like major way that actually they can quickly start adopting to be able to like collect the data or use the data in a way that benefits or gets them ready for impact investors?
So I always say start with the low-hanging fruit. If you're a startup, early stage startup, like you said, you don't have the resources, both financial, human, and knowledge resources to kind of start a complex, you know, data system. So my advice is always start with the low-hanging fruit, right? Who are your customers? Where are they located? What are some of their challenges? What solutions are you offering to them? And then disaggregate all that data. There's so much value that comes with geographic, demographic data and like gender disaggregated data, right? That tells that's a good starting point for your impact story and your impact narrative. So that's a really big one. Start with the low hanging fruit. What business are you offering? Who are your customers? Where are they located? What is the challenge that you're solving for them? And what is the solution that you're offering? And then once you have all those answers, kind of disaggregate, or once you have all that data, disaggregate it, right? Disaggregate it by age, by gender, by location, all of that stuff. Let's start there. And then the next thing I would say is set goals, like measurable goals and measurable targets that you can then create and set metrics for. And I'm not saying, you know, crazy targets like we want to be completely carbon neutral in the next 2 years or whatever, right? Whatever target is achievable for your business. So for example, if you have a team of 30 people and you look around your team and you find that there are 20 men and 10 women, set a target that in the next 2 years, we want to have like 50-50 on our team. We want to hire more women. Or you find that in your team, most of your female employees are kind of low-level employees. They're your entry-level staff. They're your like admin staff. Then set a target and say, okay, we want 50% of our engineering team to be women, right? And then kind of reverse engineer that. What does that look like? So it means that we want to filter through the applications, kind of encourage more women to apply, or does that mean that we go to certain communities that center women and center empowering women to work with them on kind of getting more female applications in our pipeline, right? So setting those targets helps you create metrics and collect data against those metrics that you can then build upon as time goes on. I think those would probably be my two biggest ones. Start with low hanging fruit and then set small measurable targets and goals, and then KPIs within those that you can kind of walk towards. And that's one good way to help you collect data that you can then report to your investors, because it tells quite a strong story to your investors. Like, okay, so we've started this business and, a year ago, 50% of our team was male. And women were in low-level positions. But over the past 2 years, we've worked with XYZ, we've done this, we've trained women, and now our management team is 30% female, right? That shows progress, that shows you, and that's, an attractive impact to those impact investors that want to invest in empowering women.
Okay, thank you. And just a quick question. So do investors, especially impact investors, do they also have their own benchmarks or metrics that they expect startups to have? And do they share that publicly, that, okay, startups can okay, you know what, if I don't know what to target, I can then have an idea. Is there information like that out there, and do investors do that?
Yes. So I think it's very tailored to the investor and the type of investors. So DFIs, for example, they definitely have this, and they have more structured frameworks around this, right? So if you speak to some of them, they'll tell you that for this cycle, whether it's a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year cycle or whatever, they're really focused on job creation in Africa and gender or something, right? If those are their topics. And so you tend to find that they invest in businesses, and the impact that they kind of ask to see from these businesses are, are you creating jobs? Are you creating jobs for women? Can women access these jobs? Or if they are investing in agriculture business, then they want to know kind of how you're empowering the smallholder farmers and increasing kind of their harvests and stuff. So each investor has a different set of goals that they're working towards, and oftentimes they do share that with their investee companies. But I think the investor side of this in Africa anyway, they're also building capacity in a similar way that the founders are, right? Because sustainability as a sector itself is still very nascent in Africa, right? So the investors themselves are also building capacity. They're also understanding that these impact goals and the things that they care about, they can also communicate to the founders and help them kind of meet those goals as well. And it's kind of like a top-down push, which is very interesting, right? Because a lot of the investors, so as a VC, their LPs, some of their LPs are DFIs who have kind of very strong frameworks and impact requirements, right, that they have to comply with in their home countries. And so they kind of ask these investors, the VCs, GP companies, to have that as well. And so that's starting to trail down towards founders. So a lot more of those conversations are happening. They are sharing what these impact goals are. And a lot of investors would happily kind of work with you to build metrics, or to set metrics to achieve some of those goals. But yeah, if your investor isn't, and it's something you care about, you can bring up the topic with them and say, this is a goal that we want to work towards. How can you support us achieving that? Yeah.
I know a lot of startups, businesses are being pushed to profitability, to focus on profitability now. How do you advise founders to balance, or what have you seen innovative approaches to balance profitability and sustainable practices?
So profitability doesn't have to come at the cost of sustainability, or it doesn't need to be a cost to impact.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be sustainable.
And that's the point, right? You don't have to, there are businesses that are sustainable but also profitable, right? We're not asking you not to be profitable, right? We're asking you to make profit in a conscious way, right? I think that's the conversation. And sometimes sustainability also helps you drive profit, right? It opens you up to new markets, new opportunities. If you're building a business and you actually think about and kind of analyze some of the data that you've collected from these different spheres, and you can see, oh, interestingly, my software company collects, and I'm just spitballing here, collects data on weather patterns. Oh, that could actually be really useful to measure kind of rainfall for agri farmers, right? There's so many, and that was a convoluted example, but the point I'm trying to make is the data that you don't think you need can also create opportunities and create other markets for you, right? It can lead you in a direction that you didn't know that your business was kind of doing. So for example, if you have, and I keep using agri-tech, I don't know why it's at top of mind today, but if you have an agri-tech business and you find that 50% of your customers are actually female smallholder farmers, then that's a new line of business that you can then pursue. Okay, so what are some of the core needs of the female farmers that we can solve with our platform? How can we get more female farmers on our platform, right? So some of the data that's collected can open you up to new opportunities, new products and services, finding new things that might be a pain or a challenge for them that is not a general challenge for the other farmers, or a challenge for people in a particular location that is not a challenge for those in an urban location. So that's one thing, but I think also there certain models. So there's something that I've been seeing a lot recently, which is the community-powered commercial model, I think it's called. And basically what this means is startups are turning their local communities into both beneficiaries, but also their business partners. So I'll give an example. There's one company based out of Kenya called Mukuru Clean Stoves, and they make clean energy stoves, right? So it's not harmful to the environment or people that are inhaling kind of the charcoals and stuff. But how it also works is they don't use retailers to sell these stoves. They use women in the community to sell these stoves. So they're empowering the local women in these rural areas that use these clean stoves that are not kerosene stoves. They're empowering them, but they're also giving them they're also giving them an opportunity to earn, right? So it's like the more stoves that they sell, the more money they make, but also the more money Mukuru Clean Stoves makes, right? So it's kind of this community-based model where the community members are kind of their business partners, but they're also kind of the beneficiaries and their customers. And that's one avenue that, you can increase profitability through kind of thinking in a larger or more comprehensive way around, sustainability. Yeah, I think that might have answered your question.
Okay, fine. I know. I mean, so if anybody has questions, please, I think you can raise up your hands or write it in the chat, and I'll try to read it. I think I'll try and make this fun a little bit. So I have one more serious question, but I have some more serious questions to ask. And this is like mostly yes or no, and just out of my own curiosity. So I know that most of the examples you have given is agri-tech, women, gender, and I still feel like sometimes the breadth of sustainability is kind of like vague for people. So I'm just gonna paint a scenario and you just tell me yes or no, and you tell me if or So I'm a company, I'm a software company, and I need to do logistics, and I employ riders that didn't have jobs before, and I use I use them as my last mile delivery to be able to deliver things for people. What is sustainable about what I've done?
So how many people are you hiring? You're giving jobs to young people. You're creating jobs for the economy. Depends on what kind of bikes you use. We could talk about your carbon footprint with transportation and emissions. If you're using bikes that are low emission bikes, then we can talk about sustainability in that sense. We can talk about the communities that you're reaching and bringing kind of access to those communities that wouldn't have had that if your delivery service kind of wasn't there, right? You're making kind of the last mile a little bit easier. I think going then to like the social side, let's talk about how much are you paying this? Are you paying them a living wage? Are you increasing kind of their income generation within that? What impact does that have? So for example, if you have one person that's a bike rider and their income has gone up 3 times since they started working with your company, what does that mean then for the communities that they live in? So do their kids now have more access to education where they didn't before? What does that translate to in the communities that they live in and that they work in? Are some of your riders female? What are the safety measures that are in place for your riders? What policies do you have to ensure their occupational health and safety while they're delivering stuff? What do you have, like hospital, what is it called? Health insurance for them that covers kind of their hospital needs if they get into an accident while they're delivering these products. So there's so many different topics that we can touch on from just that one.
Cool. Okay, so second scenario. Now I can see people chatting. So I'm a company, I'm a fintech company, and I do remittance, but I do my remittance by allowing people to send money back home, but send money to agents. So agents that are self-employed, and then people in rural areas can withdraw from the agents in local currency. What is sustainable about my business?
So the first thing that springs to mind is the people that you're sending money to. So how are you kind of increasing their access to whatever it is? I'm thinking of a business. I don't remember what they're called, but they used to do remittances for people to access healthcare. Right. So what is the impact of the funding or the money that you're sending back home? What are they using it for? How is it stimulating the economies of the communities that they're working in? Fintech, the agents. Can you explain the agent side of it a little bit? I want to see if there's anything I can pull from there.
So the agents are young people that didn't have jobs, so they became self-employed, and
okay.
I was just
all right
at them. They live in rural areas. Some of them are graduates.
Yeah.
Not graduates. I do training programs for them sometimes. Like I put them, train them. But I've been able to like give them POS devices. I've been able to like position them in a way. Yes, exactly. Upscaling.
Yeah. So upscaling. So that contributes to SDG 8, where you're creating decent work for people. You're increasing their abilities to, earn an income and increase their standard of living. Training and education is one that I can hear as well. There's always gender in everything, right? So these agents, what percentage of these agents are women, and how are you kind of contributing to empowering the female economy? Okay.
I think I've asked you really hard questions, but one last question and then I'll take on
yes.
the audience. So are you saying that the easiest way for me to know what I can measure, I can connect my impact to is SDG goal? I'll be on the SDG goals.
So to be honest, I think that's a low-hanging fruit. I think it's the SDGs are a great framework that is so accessible, right? There are 17 goals, 169 targets within that you can go through and it can help you shape your own goals, right? If you're hiring people, SDG 8 around decent work. If you are working with education, there's SDG 4, gender, SDG 5. There's so many, it speaks to every sphere of society, if you will. And so whatever business you're creating, there's something in there. There's, I think it's 7 on infrastructure. No, it's 9, sorry. There's infrastructure, industry infrastructure, where if you're building a tech business, blockchain is covered under that SDG, right? So you can go through all the SDG, go through the different targets and the different indicators. And there's an answer there for you on setting a goal or something to measure that helps calculate your impact. And that is such a low-hanging fruit. It's easily accessible to everybody, and it's something that it's a great starting point. So yes, SDGs are.
Let me take a question. Hi Labake, when you carry out when you carry out the audit and reporting process with a business, company, startup, and investor, what are the respective completion timeframes you have experienced or achieved?
So that's a very interesting question. I think it's very company specific, because it depends on how many people how many stakeholders you're engaging with, right? I tend to find that people are not as responsive when they don't have the data, which is the biggest challenge, right? So it's gone anywhere from a 3-month process to a year-long process, right? Depending on how big the company is, how many stakeholders you're engaging with, what you need from them, and how responsive they are, to be honest. But it can be anywhere from like a 3-month-long process to a year-long process, depending on how many people you're working with.
Okay, I think let me ask one question and I'll ask question again. So I know funding is a big, thing right now. People say winter is here, there's no enough funding. What's your top advice for founders that are trying to attract, investment from sustainable initiatives?
So cast your net wide. I think the funding landscape is a lot wider than I think a lot of people realize. It doesn't have to be VC or institutional investors, so PE and stuff, even though, I'm speaking on with HoaQ, but there's so many alternative sources of funding, right? You can look at foundations, you can project finance, development banks, depending on what it is your business is doing, what is your product and service, right? Organizations like, the African Development Bank, IFC, different regional banks, they have specialized funding programs for sustainable businesses, right? So we're really understanding what your offering is in this space and finding a funding facility that matches that, right? Coincidentally, they tend to offer, patient capital, or more patient capital, if you will, than commercial investors. And they kind of offer the technical assistance as well to execute, the idea that you have. But cast your net very wide. I think explore a lot of climate finance opportunities. There are so many funds out there. So there's Green Climate Fund and different specialized environmental impact funds that you can fit into. But do your research, right? Like I said, impact investors care about different things. If you find some investors who want to invest in job creation and your business is really about that. So kind of the example you gave about the fintech and remittances and hiring agents and kind of multiplying that, right? So get the data on how many jobs you're creating by multiplication of these agents and apply to be funded by an investor that cares about job creation. Like that is a metric that is important to them. Or if you're building a business or a product or service for women, the investors that want to invest in businesses that empower women, right? So do your research while casting your net wide. There are a lot of alternative funding sources that are tailored to specific goals that, you can find which one is a perfect fit for your business and go in that direction.
All right, thank you. And I'm cautious of time, so I think I'll take, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and I'll call you. But I'll just take the 2 questions in the chat. How costly is the process currently for your target users in the various jurisdictions you practice or operate in?
So it's accessible, a lot more accessible than, larger scale consulting firms or advisory firms. But consulting is expensive, right? So we haven't quite, because every situation is different and they're not like large frameworks that are directly applicable to African businesses in every sector. It still has to be a tailored offering to each business. So given the examples you gave, right? So each business has a different set of material topics than, the next business. So it's still a very much tailored service. So for that, it's, there's no cookie cutter price, but it's somewhat accessible, at least we hope.
All right. And there's a question, how to involve your employees in your sustainability strategy and reach your ESG goals? I guess.
So that's actually a really great question. I think a lot of employees these days care a lot more about sustainability than we imagine them to do. I think creating ownership within within the organization. So include them in the process of setting these goals. What are, ask them questions, take surveys of your team, right? What is it you care about with what we're doing? How do you think, this can be done better? How do you think we can include this group of people more, right? And then just bring them in at every stage of the process in setting these goals, in creating the metrics, have them have ownership of some of the actions that it takes to execute these actions, and maybe set a reward system towards it as well, right? Let it be something that counts towards their team performance or their employee performance. But I think there's increasing buy-in with people and kind of the things that they care about, especially this generation of workers. There's a lot of interest in sustainability and in responsible business. And so I think it would be relatively doable, achievable to kind of pull them in.
I was going to make a joke. I was going to say, how do we make Gen Zs interested in sustainability?
I think they're more interested than all the other generations, to be honest. Most of the activists that I have met are all Gen Zs, and they're very passionate about it, because I think they feel and they understand that the impact of climate change, and I'll speak on environmental sustainability, is something that they would experience more than other generations. But I think also because they care a little bit less, things like workplace culture, they're not putting up with it like millennials did or the generations before us, right? So I think they care a lot more than.
Okay, I don't know if anybody has any questions. If not, I think this will be the end of this segment. Labake, thank you so much. I think I'll just
my pleasure.
Who wanted to reach out to you? What's the best way to reach out to you? And yeah.
My LinkedIn.
Okay. Again? What's the best way to reach out to you?
My LinkedIn is Labake Ajiboye-Richard, or you can send me an email, labake@arinitiative.org. I'm always happy to kind of help and answer any questions. It was my pleasure. I hope it was somewhat helpful.
Yeah, it was helpful. Thank you so much, Labake. Thank you so much. Thank you from everyone that joined and from the team. My colleague Falakemi will take us through HoaQ updates, the rest of the updates. But thank you so much, Labake.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, Labake, one more time. Thank you to Yewande as well for leading this session. Just to close out this AMA for this month, I'll run you quickly through the HoaQ updates and we would have a good weekend. So currently we have 2 deals open on platform, Texture Science Labs and Catalyze You. So like fun facts about Texture Science Lab. So they're on a mission to revolutionize the world of hair extensions. And to be honest, most of the commitments we've seen have been from women. So I think is an exciting new sector that we're looking into. And, if you're interested, just go on platform and have a look at the deck, the memo. And if you have any questions, make sure you use the Slack channel dedicated to it. So yes, for our members, we currently have perks for you. So we are getting discounts for portfolio companies and other companies as well. We currently have some live already. So this is exclusive to just HoaQ members. If you're interested in them, just go to the general Slack channel and you will see the ones that are available to you. Or if you're interested in seeing any other company just on there that you use a lot, just let me know and we will try and see what we can do about that. So we also have a merch shop currently up. So for founders, investors, these are like cool things that you can wear. So we have bags, we have t-shirts, we have games that you can play amongst yourselves, and we have all that live on our shop. Yes, we recently launched HoaQ Talent to help in finding and hiring top talents in Africa, right? So we have a list of talents, we have a list of companies as well that are looking to meet talent. So we're basically linking the 2 together. So for the talents, we have something in pipeline for you guys. So soon we would share what that is. So look forward to that. We have a $5 million fund as well that is actually led by Yewande Odumo. So the person that just took this call is a $5 million fund with the aim to invest in founders who are building tech and tech-enabled startups for Africa and its diaspora. If you're interested, please just reach out to Yewande and she'll let you know more on that. Diaspora House. We recently launched a real estate investment community that invests in real estate across Africa and its diaspora prime cities. So right now we're already in the offer stage of our first property, which is almost closed. I think for this property we're almost closed out on it. But if you would like to learn more, just reach out to us and we would share the link to join the WhatsApp community and other details about Diaspora House. For those who don't know, we recently launched Borderless, right? Borderless is an infrastructure rather for global communities. It allows family and friends to come together to start a community, really. So we're currently launching it, and we have a wait list on borderless.com. So if you're interested in that, just go to onborderless.com and join our wait list. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you would like to learn more about what we do at HoaQ, you can just check out our website, our Instagram, our TikTok, our LinkedIn, our YouTube. We have various information across all those channels for you. So with that being said, thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you next month because we do this every month.
Thank you, Kemi. Thank you, Labake. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Reach out to us if you have any questions. HoaQ.co. And yeah, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Nubi, also for joining. Bye, everyone.
Have a great day, morning, afternoon, night, wherever you're calling from.